Good afternoon. My name is Scott Dahl, and I am the Program Director of the Masters in Hospitality Strategy and Digital Transformation at Les Roches in Crans-Montana. And I would like to welcome you from Switzerland to the Digital Transformation Happy Hour. For those of you that have seen the show before, I'm going to say we have a really cool show today, but you probably know I say that just about every time. But this time we do have a really cool show. We have with us today Frederic Toitot, a good friend of mine and a visiting lecturer in leadership in the Masters in Hospitality at Les Roches. And we've asked Frederic to join us today because we're going to talk about some leadership topics in hospitality. So first of all, Frederic, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon, Scott. Thank you for having me.
Man, it's great to see you, first of all. I would love for you, you and I have an interesting and similar path in how we've become teachers, right? We both have a lot of industry experience and not as much teaching experience. I've bored people with mine in the past, but do me a favor, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, and then spend a few minutes telling us about kind of where you got the expertise that's letting you do what you're doing now. So,
well, yes, I've been in the hospitality industry for the past 20 years or so, 25 years now. Very exciting adventure, and I started in the operations and went to Accor for. I've been working for Accor now, the group, for close to 20 years, and I ended up being a lecturer in some of the top hotel schools in Europe, including Les Roches. Because I love teaching and passing and transmitting to students, and I came to become a lecturer because at Accor, I spent a lot of time designing and leading training programs, especially in revenue management, sales, marketing, distribution, and I love doing it. That gave me the opportunity to know more and more the teams all around the world, the hotel teams and the corporate teams. And then I had some interesting experience as well in talent management and working more in a HR role, trying to steer the recruitment, development, and retention of the top talents at Accor for all those streams that are mostly, again, revenue management, sales, distribution, digital marketing. So that's how I am here now, talking to you and being very happy to spend this hour with you.
Cool. So really cool perspective, right? When you think of revenue management in that big of a scale, you really get some specializations. And so imagine just managing the manpower piece of it alone for a company with 9,000 hotels, I think, something like that, more hotels than any other company on the planet. So really, really cool perspective. And just before we get into too much about the leadership topics, talk about kind of what are the progression opportunities that present themselves to a lot of our audience, or people that are contemplating careers in revenue, or maybe have a couple years of experience in the business and are trying to figure out how to have a path like yours or mine. I started in housekeeping, you started in the operation, and both of us ended up on the revenue side. So it's pretty common that people take that experience, but to explain that a little bit.
Well, there is no one path, first of all. There are very, very different paths, and everyone can take his or her own. But I strongly believe that you have to start with getting your feet into the operations. I was going to say into the mud, but it's not the mud, because if you're in a 5-star hotel, that's not going to be a mud, more like a thick carpet. But it's really like getting to know your clients, being very much exposed to the teams, to the organizations, to a brand, to processes, and of course, yes, to the clients and what everything that it involves in terms of operations. Because then you are ready to move on and start getting a leadership role, as we'll see today, by using that past experience for getting the best out of your teams. So if using internship periods and all those activities that you may have at school for working in the operations is very valuable, because then you can move on and get those dream jobs that you think about, which could be being a hotel director or having a great role in marketing, revenue, or finance in a corporate office. So it's a question of not going too fast into something that may disconnect you from the reality of the operations, learning the trade, and then moving on to those positions where you can make a difference for either an organization or for people.
Yeah, I agree. I love the statement that you made. There's no one path. So many of us, you and I are both members of HSMAI. We sit on the revenue optimization board for Europe together. That's where we met, actually. And so many of our colleagues that are still actually in active revenue management roles, similar, but everyone has a slightly different path. And it sort of speaks to one of the cool things about the business, which is you can kind of gain experience and fill your toolbox and always have options as you move up through your career, that you don't have to throw away all of that old experience to use it to your advantage as you move forward. So I think that's a really cool point you make. The other one is definitely operation is helpful. Even as a vice president of revenue, every once in a while, the experience that I had in the operation would help me relate to a general manager who I was trying to influence, trying to get them to understand that I was really trying to help them. But it wasn't really until they understood that I smelled a little bit like a hotel person that I had enough credibility that they would listen to me, that I understood their world. And so I think you don't have to spend 15 years in the operation. I spent 10 years in the operation. I don't think it needs to be nearly that long, but it needs to be long enough to get the smell, because that's where the empathy comes from, and the credibility and the experience, right? To be able to look back and, as you say, to be able to be a leader, right? To be a credible leader.
You're right, Scott. And let's not forget the ones among us who are going to keep on going into the operations, because we are talking about the operations as if it was a kind of starting point. But for some of us, it's going to be the whole adventure, and it's great. We still need to have inspiring leaders in the operations for the hotel teams or any teams that you have around hospitality, lodging industry, etc. And there are great jobs out there. If you love traveling, if you love, meeting a lot of people from different cultures, using digital tools, cool digital tools, and that hospitality is for you. And I know at Accor and in other brands, people who have spent years and years and years without a moment of routine in the operations, hopping on and hopping off into different countries or different ventures, and having a great professional life. So it's really a question of knowing who you are, what you like, what you want to be doing. And I'm talking here to students. Don't forget, life is very long, and whatever you're going to do at 25 is not going to be constraining you, and you can do so many different things when you're going to be 35, 40, 50. When I was 25, coming out from my master degree, I thought I would become a GM in one of those 4 or 5-star hotels somewhere around the world, and it never happens. Why? Because life is giving you other opportunities, and it's fine, as long as you say that you keep your options open and you know where you're standing, so you're keeping control of what you do and where you're going.
Yeah, I think it's super sage advice. So, and I think both of us are a testament to the other nice part of the business, which is hard work is rewarded, right? And I tell people, I'm very willing to admit I'm not the smartest person around, but I was always willing to work. It would be hard to outwork me at certain times in my life, and that's what carries through, I think, in leadership. And you only have to think of our HSMAI meetings. You have 10 people that are responsible for at least $2 billion worth of hotels sitting around the table. And when we get up to take the break, everyone tries to open the door for everyone else. So they're all still hoteliers. We still walk around a hotel that's not ours and pick up trash. We do all those kind of funny little things that you learn to do in the business that you never really, it doesn't get out of your system. It stays in your system if you're going to be successful, and you've just chosen a different specialty, right? So
definitely.
Cool. All right. So let's jump onto some leadership stuff, man. I tell you what, I asked you, we put together 3 kind of cool topics that we would talk about. And so on each of them, I'm going to turn you loose, and then we'll have a little bit of a discussion after that. But the first one is like, what are the mega trends right now? If you were a student getting ready to graduate, you're out for a year or two, you're trying to navigate your own path. what do you need to really focus on so that you can, create a good opportunity for yourself as a leader in hospitality in the future?
Yeah, that's a very important question. And first of all, Scott, if you may, I'd like to remind everyone what is leadership or what is not leadership. Okay, that would be a nice introduction to make, so that we are clear on what we are talking about. Leadership is working with people, right? It's engaging and motivating people, and that's the difference with management. Management will be working with systems. It will be designing and running the systems that are going to organize work. So first of all, please do not mix one and the other. Management and leadership are not the same. And here we're going to focus about leadership today. So Scott, you were asking me about those mega trends that you need to understand to lead and to be a leader, an effective leader for your company in the future. So I'm going to quote a few of them. The first mega trend that is happening now and that is going to last for the coming years is the one that I would call Globalization 2.0. So by Globalization 2.0, I mean it's different than Globalization 1.0. That was the first globalization that we heard about. We are here talking about this new economic world that is emerging. Think about China, think about the Middle East, think about Brazil, those big countries that are developing very, very fast. And what I want to say here is that the power is shifting between what we were calling the old economies and those new power centers. So for organizations, it means that we are now having the decision centers and the impact that were before in New York, in Paris, or in Berlin, switching and moving to places like Shanghai, Singapore, or Dubai. So that's something that you as future leaders, you need to understand, to grasp, and to integrate in your reflection. The second point, the second trend, mega trend that I would like to speak about is this environmental crisis that we are, unfortunately living in. The critical natural resources are becoming scarcer, and the climate change is more threatening as a result of the human activity. The consequence of that is that costs are accelerating. Think about our hotels, think about our companies, and we have pressure from society, from politics, and from the market as well, and from the clients. So it means that you, me, as leaders, we have to rethink the way we operate today and tomorrow to take into account this sustainability environmental situation. The third element will be individualization. By that, I mean the growing affluence, purchase power, if you want, in emerging markets, like I was quoting China, Dubai, Brazil, but not only those ones, there are plenty others. And these increasingly individualistic attitudes that we see now, think about your clients, your customers. People expect more personalization. People expect not to be considered as numbers, but as someone specific, a human being, that is just me and not another client. So it means that you, as a leader, you'll have to think about niche opportunities for customized offerings, for all those specific offers and prices and conditions that you will offer to your clients and to your employees as well, to your teams, that will require from leaders probably greater sensitivity and agility from the organizations that you're going to build. So here it's a question of being sensitive and agile to the world around us that is becoming more individualized. The fourth point I would like to stress is the demographic change. We have a rapidly aging world population. We know that. That is transforming markets and putting a great pressure on social structures and welfare programs. It means what for us in our companies? A shrinking global workforce because it is aging, sparking a war for talents among organizations. The less people you have that are, let's say, skilled or with the right attitude, the more pressure you have to get them in your organization, right? So talent management is going to become a real issue as well tomorrow because of that demographic change. And you can imagine that those intergenerational workforce will have needs, expectations, motivations that are substantially different than what we've known in the past years. The fifth megatrend that I would like to tell you today about, it will be the digital era. So that's really about, I know at Les Roches, there's a lot about the digital tools and revolution. We try to really push that for the students, make sure that they integrate that into their thinking and reflection. But digital era is really about making sure that we are living and working with a digital technology. It has become the norm today. The digital platforms are shifting power from the organizations to the consumers and the employees. Okay, and think about particularly about the younger generations, what we call the millennials today, those digital natives who are breaking down the old divisions between professional and personal life. So those boundaries between personal and professional life are kind of getting blurry now. And the COVID-19 situation that we are just experiencing right now are making this even a more important situation. So it means what? As a leader, you probably need to be more transparent, even more honest and genuine than you were before. You will have to act with sincerity and with authenticity, because that new generation is not going to expect anything else. And the last point I would like to cover, the last mega trend that you, again, as a future leader, need to think of will be what I call the technological convergence. Here we're talking about the scientific progress in many domains. Not all of them are impacting hospitality, but some of them do. I mean, I'm coming from revenue management. I told you that, and we know that the evolutions and the progress into algorithms, data management, data analytics, the machines, is impacting a great deal our jobs and the way we operate. So this wave of innovation will create untold new market products and new jobs as well, but there will be a huge demand for staying ahead of the curve. And as a company, as a leader, you have to think that, you have to anticipate that situation by collaborating closely with competitors, keeping the best talents in your organizations as well. So that's, as you can see, those mega trends are going to have a strong impact, not only on the way you are engaging leadership, but as well on your teams, on your organizations, and on your customers. Back to you, Scott. Yeah.
Okay. Frederic, thank you very much. I mean, really cool. I wrote a ton of notes. Hopefully some other people wrote some notes as well. But now let's have a little bit of follow-up conversation on that. And actually, I wrote kind of point by point. So let's do that. The first thing I want to comment on, though, you mentioned the difference between leadership and management. And it made me really think of an example I think that we can relate to people that have not really been in a leadership position yet. But to me, a manager gives direction, but a leader influences my behavior even when they're not around. And so think of when you've been in a position of being working for someone, right? The boss gives direction and we follow that direction. But if that's the most important reason that we have, okay, pretty good, but not great, right? But if a leader enlists us in a team effort and we're all part of the outcome, then we think on our own, right? And we react, and we're empowered, and we care about the outcome for the organization. And so the boss doesn't have to be there for me to know how to do my job my best. My best is to do my job the way I think I should do it at my best, And so that's really, I think, the big thing that you mentioned really is there's two different kinds of bosses, if you want to use that term, and one is much less of a boss than the other, and it's a leadership influences people when they're not there. Globalization, I thought that was a really interesting thing that you led with. So talk a little bit. I mean, Les Roches is a super international school. The schools that you teach at are super international. So clearly there's a little bit of an advantage there, but how would someone really, what are some actual steps that you could take to take advantage of that in your own life, do you think?
In my own life?
No, I mean, not your life. You've already done it. But let's say that someone's looking at it, right? I mean, would you endorse kind of looking at jobs based on regions and trying to get experience in other parts of the world? I mean, how does someone prepare themselves for that?
I would, if I was a student today and I was 21, 22, and I wanted to make a career in hospitality, I would really, really have a close look at what's happening in Asia, in the Middle East, and potentially as well in Brazil, in South America, and why not in Africa as well? Yeah. Why? Simply because this is where things are happening today. Yeah. I mean, of course, in Europe and in the USA, you're coming from the USA, Scott, that still innovation is there. We're doing great things, but those markets are very mature already. So this is not where you will get the craziest ideas and the most money pouring in for, designing fancy hotels or having fancy organizations, because those economies, for many reasons, including regulations, will not allow that sometimes. If you go to Singapore, you go to China, you go to Dubai, you go to Sao Paulo, you have that possibility, and it makes the whole world much more kind of broad, with bigger perspective. And when you are 21, that's very exciting. So it means what concretely? Don't just focus on those European capitals or those places that you've been talking about in America, or Australia, or Canada. There are places where things are happening today in hospitality that you really need to consider. And working in a hotel in China or in Singapore has for students a huge effect, because even if they come back to Europe or to the Americas, they will know what's that market about, how those people behave, what are the needs and expectations, and how they want to spend their money, and how the teams, when you're going to be a leader, how the teams are actually getting motivated, what are the needs and expectations. So I will go there. I will have an experience there, or at least I will study really well what it takes to be a global leader, in those emerging markets.
Sure. I mean, it's cool. One of the coolest things about the business is the ability to, see other parts of the world. And earlier in my career, I had a 10-year time period that I didn't live in a city for more than a year, for 10 years. And yet I moved in a style that was much better than someone normally at that point in their lives. I lived in the hotel until I found a place to live. I ate room service until I found a place to live. Like, it was really kind of a cool experience. And someone else was paying the bills on that. And yet I got the opportunity to live in a lot of different places. So you point out a really, I think, a neat opportunity in the business that also, as we talk about that toolbox, I mean, managing in other cultures will certainly help your toolbox. No question about it. No question about it. So let's take a shift here. Let's talk about the whole green thing. You mentioned green, right? And what's happening with green. And the one thing that I think is interesting is, our business is hurt right now, right? Numbers are down, money is down. And so far, we've not been able to find a way that green doesn't cost. And so, and there's a lot of really interesting studies out there, right, that say that, most people, absolutely 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, I involve sustainability in my decision making. But then when they vote, they typically, when they vote with their wallets, they sometimes don't choose sustainable. They save a little bit of money. And so where do you see that going? Do you think that we'll eventually get to the place where I think that we're willing to spend a little bit more money on it? Do you think consumers have to drive that? What happens with where does green eventually end up? Right now, hotels see it as a cost, unfortunately, I think, for the most part.
Well, a cost and probably an opportunity too, Scott, because when you are a big brand and you show to the face of the earth that you are investing resources and money into making our world a bit better, it works. Studies have shown that our clients love the fact that they stay in hotels that are taking care of the environment. I agree with you that as long as they don't have to pay anything and that it's not, then they are very happy with
it's
it.
the difference between this hotel or that hotel. It's huge. It doesn't make them pay more though so far very often, right?
No,
That's
exactly.
the sentiment.
Yeah, but this is where
It's a
there is
route to loyalty,
yeah,
perhaps.
yeah, exactly, loyalty. So it's probably more like an indirect type of benefit for the hotels to have a base of clients that are, really happy to stay in a place where they know, the coffee is coming from a sustainable place, the beds or the furniture is the same, and there are a lot of efforts made by the brand. And so I strongly believe that it has an effect, probably indirect, but it's true that it costs a lot. So in some economies, it's mandatory. I mean, we come to countries now where you have to do it, otherwise you get penalized. And you have other economies where it's still an option. I imagine that in a
the
few
difference
years
being
it will
where
be.
it's mandatory, the difference being that where it's mandatory, it doesn't become a competitive advantage to not comply, right?
You're right.
Because that's the issue. It becomes a profit advantage in the places where it's not mandatory. It becomes a little bit different, a little bit different equation as far as that goes. So
Right.
yeah, I think you're right. I think one of the things that we don't do a great job, and we talk about it when we talk about digital marketing, Expedia waits probably until the fourth transaction with someone to make money because of the amount of money they spend acquiring that customer, where we don't look at customer lifetime value the same way. And potentially if we started looking at customer lifetime value, sustainability might all of a sudden rocket up the list as very effective marketing. But we don't really measure it as effectively as we probably should. So you make a great point about it being a loyalty driver. That's a great point. Hey man, let's jump a little bit into individualization. And you mentioned demographics next, so I want to make sure we talk about the difference between the two. But I think individualization, for me, one of the things it says is, for the most part, demographic segmentation is dead, right? When we start putting people in buckets based on their skin color and their age and things like that, it's just clunky. And we used to be able to, that was the best we had, right? Oh, between 30 and 40, that kind of thing. But if you put me in a group with 55-year-olds, I behave differently than a good majority of them. It's not good segmentation. So that individualization thing, I think, pushes us in the direction of focusing more on behavior and attitude when we create our market segments, and really trying to know people better and communicate with them in a less clunky and, quite frankly, sometimes less sensitive way, right? In terms of putting them in different buckets. But how do you see it that to me, I see that as a marketer's opportunity, right? I see that as social media is becoming more powerful than other types of marketing because we can really reach people and their behaviors and attitudes and that sort of thing. But how about from a leadership perspective? What about how does that continued blending of cultures affect the ability to be a good leader?
Well, it's a challenge and an opportunity, as many things, right? Having your clients and your teams, right? Because we're talking about the customers here, but think about our kids today, our children. They become much more individualistic that we were, Scott, a few years ago, right? That's part of our new society, right?
That's
So that
right.
has an effect when they become customers in hotels, when they have to spend their money. They don't want to follow the crowd. I mean, ask our students today. They want to have a life that is their own. They don't want to do what their parents were doing, right? So it reflects then on
Frederic, the number of times that I've said my dad would have killed me in the last 5 years is amazing, right? As you reflect back on how different that really is. You're absolutely correct. It's
right. So it has an effect on the purchasing decisions and the way our customers are approaching us, but also on the way our teams or staff is approaching the work and the jobs into our organizations. If you are using the same old method where it's a one size fits all, you get all the same uniform in that hotel, and you have to smile with the same smile and have the same this and that ways of expressing yourself to the clients, you won't get the top talents very long in your hotels, because this isn't how they behave today. They want to be themselves, right? Themselves with consumers who are themselves feeling like they want to be a specific customer, a specific person. So it's a one-to-one approach that is, I think, making the whole hospitality service much more complex than it was before, because customers are expecting much more from us than before. And from as a leadership perspective, to be a leader with a bunch of young people behaving like this, that's complicated, because they want to do the own things. But that's very exciting, because if you manage to reining these talents around a global, common objectives and a common motivation, then it's probably like the best you can get today.
Magic, right? Think about Citizen M, for example, right? And really the focus that they put on authenticity. And it can be your brand or not be your brand. It's a very well-positioned brand, in my opinion. So some people are not supposed to like it. But I think the one thing it does, I think it manages to absolutely make their employee authenticity part of their branding by encouraging people to be different. And you look at a Citizen M staff. My first job was at a Marriott front desk. 90% of those people wouldn't have been hired for facial hair or piercings. Just done. Sorry, none of you can work here. And that's changed, thankfully. And I think, consumers drive that change. You don't have to wear a luxury tie in the middle of I don't have to wear a necktie in the middle of the desert for it to be luxury anymore, thankfully. And I think that it's, consumer attitudes have changed that. But your comments on what it's changed for the team building piece is super interesting too. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the demographic change, because that's about aging and it's not my favorite topic. But I think you're right. I think that there's a shift, right, in terms of experience. There's a shift in terms of disposable income. People are searching more of an experience, and so I think understanding the change in consumers is super critical. And again, that authenticity, right? Think about people more in a leisure mode. I'd really rather meet people than meet robots, and I don't mean that for automation. I mean that for personality and stuff. But digitalization's a big one, man. Les Roches is really focused on digitalization. You and I are both in parts of the industry that's super digital, that's portable. We often went to work exactly in the setting that we're sitting today. And so talk a little bit about that. I mean, the future, I think that, more and more people are expecting to work from home. I think there's really incredible statistics about the number of, as a result of COVID, the number of office leases that when they come due are not going to be renewed, and the number of people that are able to work from home. But from a manpower perspective, I think it's a recruiting tool, right? Hi, we haven't hired you yet, but if we're going to hire you, we're going to give you this amazing laptop. We're going to install fiber optic internet all the way to your house, because we're a digital company. But how does it play into an organization, the whole move towards being more digital? And I mean, there's obviously some leadership opportunities with two-dimensional meetings, so how does it matter?
Well, for a start, I guess that if you don't have the people around you, which is going to be the case more and more because of those digital capabilities that we have now in our homes, it means that to become or to be a great leader is going to be, probably more difficult, or at least we will go back to the definition of a leader, as you said in the introduction, Scott, which is you don't need to be around your staff, or your staff doesn't need to have the leader next to him to be great and be engaged and motivated in what he does. So we are going now to probably see the difference big time between those teams where we thought there was a leader, and people engaged with that leader, and the teams where there was really a leader, someone that was actually doing it the right way. Because when you don't have the people around you and they are not engaged in what they do, then it goes down the drain very, very, very quickly.
Think
So
about
that's
the
probably what's happening right now. Sorry, Scott. That's probably what's happening right now in many organizations, where working from home or from a remote office is becoming very difficult, because since you don't have that engagement or motivation, like with a global objective or a common objective that you're sharing with a team, then it becomes a kind of very kind of sad and boring experience.
Isolated. I mean, no water cooler. So how do we bump into each other? So how do we find out what's going on in our lives? So how do we feel close? So how do we trust each other? It has to be facilitated completely differently now, because it's you have to work at it. And I'm sure you're learning that just in teaching online. You have to work harder to engage people, and you have to come up with ways to keep them just interested, right, and to understand that we're human. Because the reality is, when we walked into the classroom, there was 10 minutes before class started when we talked about stuff, and people went, "Oh, okay, he's normal." Now I'm on TV. It's just a completely different thing, right? You have to really treat it, all of it, very differently. Fine. Let's talk about tech convergence now. That's digital transformation as well. As we start to dig into that, and as I start to learn more about it, and we start to really teach a lot about it, what I'm starting to realize is it's not about the technology. It's actually about all of the space in between. It's about the business rules and the people and the acceptance and choosing the right technology and not choosing the wrong technology and some of that kind of stuff. But what's the implication to that in leadership, Frederic?
Well, if you're the leader of a revenue management team, for a start, and you are very much involved into technology, things are becoming very complex today, because people are not. I mean, your staff will not be using the same tools. Tools will be very much. I mean, there's a lot of digitalization on the market, and basically, it's becoming quite complex to know exactly how to operate. So you have those organizations that do manage that very well, because they have this capacity to encompass and to rein in that tech convergence that we are talking about. They understand that. And you have all the others that are just lost in the middle of the savannah, right? Because it's coming from everywhere. I mean, that, Scott, right? As a revenue manager, that today you used to have your old PMS together with your RMS. That was cool. And then maybe you had like a GDS coming around. And that's it. Now it's a kind of a galaxy of technology coming down to you. Every morning you get called by a new company, new startup that is doing the best revolution in the world, and they tell you that you have to have it. Your competitors are investing a lot on some of those options, and you have to keep up the pace. And that's really complex. So as a leader, you have to be able to tell your teams, you have to prioritize, you have to make them understand why you're using that technology and not that one, how to link, to bridge all those project teams and experts together to work in the same direction. Wow, that's complex.
I mean, think about what's happened. There's been an absolute explosion of productivity apps and communication apps and all these kind of applications. And so 5 years ago, if you wanted to implement technology in an environment because of permissions and those kind of things, someone from IT was the driver on that, and decisions got made at an organizational level. Well, that's not the case anymore. Now it's very democratized. But that means that an organization that's not very careful can have everybody in all kinds of different communication vehicles and really kind of expose people to something that has started to be called notification fatigue, right? That your phone just never stops dinging and ringing and flashing and doing all these things, because you've got Basecamp and you've got Trello and you've got all these different project management softwares all going off because everybody has one they like. instead of everyone sort of, managing that transition and figuring out the right ones to use and stuff. So it definitely has a human cost as we just, if we don't organize that and I think become very mindful in terms of how we digitally transform the organization instead of just letting it happen democratically. Because in my case, if I, part of it's because I have some Facebook friends that are very prolific, but if I leave my notifications on, my phone battery only lasts a couple hours. So I have to turn a lot of them off, or it just sits over there and shakes the whole time. And it could be someone in my family is ill, or it could be that someone got a new puppy that I don't even know very well. So there's a fatigue issue that comes along with all that stuff too. So yeah, thanks. So Frederic, that's that first list. So thank you very much. I think that was really it was really fascinating and fun to kind of dig into. But I'm going to turn you loose on topic number 2 right now, if that's okay. And that was you'd mentioned it's kind of the golden rules of leadership. So what's the stuff that boy, don't violate these if you want to be successful? What would those be?
Well, here I'm not going to be very original, but I think it's important before we speak again, Scott, and you ask me follow-up questions, that we make a point on those elements, those items that are non-negotiable when you are a leader or when you want to remain a leader. So I'm going to give you a few of those items. The first one that you need to look at is major. That's what we call influence. So leadership and influence are like twin brothers. We could even say that the true measure of leadership is influence. If you are very influential, if you have a lot of the capacity to attract, to make people to follow you, to listen to you, to trust you, then you're probably a leader. If it is not the case, then you're not a leader. So one and the other are working very well together. So influence is the measure of leadership, nothing more, nothing less. As a leader, you are listened to, people follow you, you're very influential. The second item that I would like to put on the table here is the time. Time is essence when you are a leader or when you want to become a leader. You are not becoming a leader from one day to another, right? Some people are probably born with what we call charisma, or this capacity to make others follow them in the playground at school from the kindergarten. We know that, right? I mean, lots of studies have shown that. That being said, leadership develops daily. It is not just happening in one day, right? And for you students, I have to tell you that leadership is not something that you learn at school. So I'm going to come to Les Roches to give you a course on leadership awakening, to make you understand what is on the table, what you need to consider. But leadership is about, practice. It's a behavior. It's not like a skill that you get from one day to another. So it's very important to understand that time is the essence, and that is, if today you feel that you're not really there, you have the whole life in front of you to become a great leader. The third point will be trust. I know, Scott, you've been talking about trust already. We have quoted that word already a couple of times in this afternoon. Trust is the foundation of leadership, the source of leadership, because it takes trust to build relationships. We know that without trust, people are not connecting. So you have to trust people to make good decisions at work or in your private life even. And those people have to trust that they won't be punished if they do it wrong. Because that's the thing with some so-called leaders, is that failure is not authorized. It's not allowed. And that's a real mistake. I need to trust you that you won't punish me if I am doing it wrong. That's a very important statement. And that's something that in my personal experience, I have something not seen every day in the workplace, especially in positions like hotel operations or in the kitchens, in those fast-paced environments where, doing mistakes can be quite regular, and you need, in that case, to have someone next to you that is going to support you, that you can trust for that. And a leader will have that. The fourth point will be respect. Very much linked to trust. People naturally follow leaders stronger than themselves. I repeat, people naturally follow leaders stronger than themselves. So following a leader is becoming natural to people when that person is a real leader. You are a leader when people follow you, when they are inspired and motivated by what you say, what you do, how you act, how you behave. So we can say that leaders will be, they embody the purpose and the principle of the company. There were many occasions at Accor when I was talking about someone, usually as an executive, and I will say about that person, wow, that person is really Accor. They embody the values and the culture of Accor. That's a very good starting point for becoming a leader, because then you respect that person because they themselves are respecting the company and the values of the company. So it's a kind of moral authority, if you want. A leader will be like a moral authority. The next point will be the connection. That's a tricky one. Okay, connecting to people. And when I say connecting, it's not just handing over your business cards. It's something that someone said once, that leaders touch a heart before they ask for a hand. Okay, you get that? So what we are saying here is that if the great leaders of this world are actually connecting to the heart of the people before anything else. And we all know those people, in our private life or at work, who are simply connecting to you, and you feel at ease with them. You feel comfortable. You feel that you can trust them. And that's something that leaders do very well. That's something that you can learn doing. But for some of us, it may be a bit more complex, more kind of difficult to do, because that's not part of maybe of our DNA. But we could try to do that. And it's very important that people get this feeling that you touch their heart before you ask them for a service or for doing a task or for any other type of business action. Empowerment will be the next one. Quite easy to understand. That's a word we know all well. Empowerment. Only secure leaders give power to the others. So if you get someone that doesn't give power to the others, then he's not probably a leader. It's probably more like a manager, someone that is keeping the all the benefits and the congratulations for himself or for herself. A true leader will be empowering the teams and sharing with the team. And the last one, because a leader is supposed to be a successful person as well, it's victory. And by victory, I mean that leaders always find a way for the team to win, the team and themselves. So, being part of a team where you have a leader that is always failing, it's probably not where you want to be for too long. So great leaders not only manage all those rules, but on top of that, they succeed. And they share that with their team, and they make their team shine.
Awesome. Amazing. Perfectly right on track. I just want to comment on a couple of things because we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we talk about a little bit about your final topic, because I think that's the one we want to leave everyone with as we go. But you mentioned a couple of really cool things, Frederic, that people tend to follow people that are stronger than themselves. And then you talked about empowerment. And I can actually speak for myself personally. At the point when my career took off and I really had people supporting me, really working hard to make sure that our team was successful, that I would turn around and say, wow, I can't believe that person contributed that much to my success, was when I realized that it was an okay thing to have people on my team that were stronger than me as well. and that that it was okay to let them just be there for a while. They're just passing through, but they can bring a lot of benefit while they're there. And it takes, as you mentioned, a lot of it takes a lot of self-confidence, right, to be able to do that. I think that's a big thing. You also, I loved your quote, right, that leaders touch your heart before they ask for your hand.
That's not for me. That's not for me, though, Scott. Huh? I have to say
no. This is a quote, right? But I tell you, one that I steal sometimes is similar, and that is that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And I think that's a really good thing from a leadership perspective, right? That you can be super knowledgeable, but if you don't have transparent, you don't show caring, you're pretty much going to end up doing most of the jobs yourself because no one's going to be there to support you, right? So that's amazing stuff. So the final topic that I asked you for was, this is the takeaway. So we got to get to this one. Keep in mind, we try to end on time, so we got about 7 or 8 minutes. But some personal recommendations for what's a great leader, right? So what do we take away from the discussion we've had today?
Yeah, so thank you, Scott. I'll try not to be too long on that so we can have a final discussion. Really, it's about I want you to realize that everything that we've been talking about today is revolving around people. So it's all about people. So my first best personal recommendations I can give to you who are listening to us today will be, make sure that people come first and not the profits. Right? The profits will come after if you take care of the people. And by people, I don't mean only your teams. It could be your peers, your suppliers, your managers, your customers, of course, all your stakeholders, the people around you, those ones that are working around you with a heart, who needs to be strongly engaged. They are the ones that you need to take care of when you're a leader. Then we know the service profit chain theory, where if you have happy employees, they will be very productive, and then they will generate value to the customers, and those customers will be satisfied, be loyal to the brand, and then generate profit for the company, right? So start with the people. That's my first takeaway. The second one is about investing on personalities much more than skills. We need to understand that today, and especially now, tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, skills are going to be available somewhere on the internet. The knowledge is everywhere now. It's not going to be, and machines and robots are going to do a lot. What is going to make people stand out from others are going to be their personalities and their behavior. So you as a leader, you as a team talent scout, you need to ensure that you're going to look and focus on personalities and behaviors when you recruit people and when you develop people in your teams, more than skills and competencies that they can learn and develop anywhere on the job later on. The third one, takeaway, will be a role model. Okay, I have an expression that I love very much that I've been using all the time with my teams. It is walk the talk. Walking the talk is something that a lot of us are not doing when we are in management positions, because we say you should do that, but I'm not doing it myself. So can you imagine how your teams are looking at you after that? They don't respect you, they don't trust you. And then we go back to what we said earlier, which is that you lose all your authority and you're not a leader. You become just a manager, maybe. So being a role model, walking the talk is very important, especially in the hospitality industry, where we have customers in front of us and where we have to prove and to show every day to our staff and our teams that what we do with them, with our customers, we do it with them, and that we mean it, and that it's not just a posture. It's a reality. Empowering your team, we said that already, but that's a very important one. And I'm not going to talk about it again, because we had this discussion about empowerment, but it's very important to realize that modern leaders are empowering their teams. Where I want to go, the last item is about the celebration. and how you use celebration to motivate your staff. I have seen in my experience throughout the companies for which I have been working in my life, great occasions to celebrate that were missed, that were lost. Celebration matters as long as that those celebrations are genuine, they are authentic, they are meaningful. But then when you have the two together, you get teams that are so happy to be recognized for what they are doing, for the achievements, for the successes, and that's making the whole difference. So that's how you're going to make sure that today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, you're gonna have a team engaged and following you.
That's a great one, Dan, on the absolutely right in terms of celebration. And it's absolutely right that it must be completely and fully genuine, because otherwise what it does is it reinforces the negative behavior that people are aware of, So if you celebrate something that's partially positive, in fact, you're rewarding the negative piece of it too. So it's got to be really, really, really genuine. But there's enough metrics and enough stuff going on with KPIs in our business. You can find something to celebrate if you want to celebrate something genuinely. So I think that's a really great point. And I think being able to share in those successes with your staff and is critical. And then you also mentioned walking the walk. By its definition, leading means being followed, and you can't lead from the back. You've got to be on the front end. And your staff, as you mentioned, they're not going to call on you to do their job all day long, but nothing will hurt your credibility more rapidly than if you demonstrate that in a pinch, you're not willing to do it for a few minutes, because that means you're asking people to do things you won't do yourself. And I think the way we all react to that is pretty crummy, right? So,
Right.
so man, those are really good. That's absolutely amazing, Frederic. Thank you very much for your insight. I think it was super valuable today. I just want to give you an opportunity, like any last minute kind of wrap ups. We're sort of running up against the time, but you nailed it in terms of what my objectives were. So I don't have a whole lot left. So any final word of wisdom as we say goodbye to everybody today?
Well, no, I guess there's a lot of students listening to us today and tomorrow, because it's going to be on the internet. And I want everyone to understand that the world is yours, but the world is changing. So you need to adapt to that new world. You're young today and you are kind of aligned with this new world, but there's going to be a shift between where you are to, how you grow and how the world is going very, very fast. So the most important is that you keep always, with a goal, a direction, where you want to go, and you never forget that people matter. That when you're going to be in charge of a profit line, yes, your owner, yes, your management needs to make money, but at the end of the day, what counts are the people working for delivering and making that profit. They are the ones who are going to make you successful and make the company successful.
And I would tell you, as a final word, I would challenge any leader that doesn't believe that to clean their entire hotel any given day and see how that goes. Right? You can't do it in our business without people. You're absolutely correct. Thank you, Frederic. So anyway, Frederic, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to you getting over here and teaching with us. Quite frankly, looking forward to that in the spring, being able to be in person. I think that'll be fantastic. My fingers are really, really crossed. But thank you so much for what you delivered today online. I think it was super valuable for everybody. Other than that, I'm glad those of you that joined us today. Hopefully you found something valuable in it too. And we'll be back on in a couple weeks with a similar topic. So have a fantastic day, Frederic. Thank you very much. Carolina in the background, thank you for all your help. And we'll see everybody soon.